Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our current webinar, Shift in the Business Recruitment Landscape. I'm just saying now that people started joining, so I'll give it a couple of minutes before starting with the content, just to make sure that everyone is hearing actually the most important bit. Before continuing though, I would like to mention that this webinar is actually recorded. So in case you joined a bit later or you need to leave a bit earlier, we will make sure that you will get the full webinar content later on our YouTube link. So you can also watch it. And having said that, if you need to leave a bit earlier, I would like to highly encourage everyone to start asking questions during the presentation already, or even if you can stay until the end, but you have questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to ask it already then. We have a separate Q&A part for this, so I would like to kindly ask everyone to ask their questions there, just so that we have everything all together, and I can make sure now not to miss any of the questions. So it looks like by now we have more than 50 participants. So I think I will start slowly going into the content as well. First and foremost, let me introduce myself. Hold on, if my presentation is actually working. Yes, so this is me. My name is Edina. I'm the recruitment manager of our Rotterdam office at Adams Multilingual Recruitment. And Adams is a recruitment agency specialized on the international sector in the Netherlands. So we've been present on the market for over 20 years now. We managed to build successful relationships with our international clients and some other partners in the business. And hopefully with our expertise, we can share some useful tips and tricks today on the change in the recruitment landscape to you as well. So the agenda today, first I will start with some market trends, some general market trends, what has changed, and how the recruitment landscape is shifting. Then I'm going to talk a bit about how to approach this with the help of job adverts, with the help of the hiring process, how to fine-tune everything, what the company struggles are right now, how to interview candidates on the current market, how to bring your company culture across without actually physically being able to meet candidates or employees, what the most important recruiter skills are at the moment and will be in the future, remote working, and of course, candidate expectations. So as I mentioned, to begin with, the market trends. So the unemployment rate has slightly increased to 4.4%. The beginning of the year, it was actually 3.6% or close to 3.5%. So it has definitely increased. Having said that, a lot of companies started talking about being a more company-driven market. My experience and our experience at Adams is, though, that this is not completely true, not just yet at least. Of course, there were a lot of industries very heavily hit by the current pandemic, and especially when we think of the tourism, the hospitality sector, a lot of people have lost their jobs. However, there are other industries and other sectors that are actually doing extremely well under the current pandemic, and the competition for candidates hasn't really gone down so much. So in my opinion, the market has balanced itself out a bit. Some companies have a bigger advantage at the moment, and there is a bigger pool of candidates available, but it hasn't shifted completely to a company-driven market just yet. Younger candidates tend to be more impacted under the current situation, not only job starters or fresh graduates, but also younger candidates that have just started their career. They have had a job for 1 or 2 years, maybe still on a temporary contract. We realize that most of the times their contracts don't get renewed, or they cannot be extended due to budget cuts or other circumstances as well. Which also means that this pool of younger candidates will be available on a short notice for temporary jobs. Candidates with jobs, on the other hand, tend to value job certainty. So they are extremely reluctant to change jobs at the moment. If they consider, then they really do evaluate options. They have a lot of time at the moment to research companies, to research their situations. What they are changing is actually worth for them to change to. But on the bright side, foreign investment agencies still attract a lot of businesses to come to the Netherlands, which can create further opportunities for employment. Luckily, we also have some partners in this sector, Bridge, for instance, or the NFIA or the Rotterdam partners, who tend to contact us when new companies plan to invest their business or plan to move their business to the Netherlands and establish their office here. And we do hear some buzz on the market. So that's definitely a good sign after a difficult period. And to further continue on the bright side, so industries that do actually really well. The e-commerce business, of course, everyone is ordering everything online at the moment. Financial technology companies and high-tech companies, these are mostly startups scaling up, and they tend to do really well on the current market. Recreational home and hobby, this is not super surprising, considering that, yeah, a lot of people who previously spend their money going on holidays and yeah, just traveling, they invest now in their homes and yeah, just to stay at home and have some kind of recreational activity in the comfort of their place. FMCG, of course, especially in the beginning of the pandemic when people started piling up stock at home and yeah, just to make sure that they can survive whatever was coming their way. FMCG still started also booming. And logistics, again, not surprisingly, in hand in hand with e-commerce. Of course, the products that you order online need to reach their destination as well. Jobs in demand. Our experience is that at the moment, especially in the HR field, comp and ben related roles and L&D related roles started becoming very, very popular. We tend to think it's because compensation and benefits started becoming extremely popular because companies not only want to attract candidates with really attractive packages, but also for employee retention. So they try to make sure that they can offer really advantageous secondary benefit package to their employees. And learning and development, I'll get back to that a bit later at a later stage of my presentation. But with the organization changes, learning and development also started getting a bigger emphasis. FP&A roles, so anything that's financial and analytical roles at the moment seem to be very trendy, just because companies like to see how they are performing compared to how they were performing the previous year, previous couple of years, and what they can plan for in the future. So how to make their output even more efficient and how to make the most out of the current situation. Digital marketing and sales, again, not really surprising. Everyone is trying to sell a bit more at the moment and emphasize yeah, their activities. Languages in demand. Again, maybe not so surprisingly, German and French are two popular languages. So those of you who work in the multilingual sector probably won't be shocked by this. But what we started realizing is that actually most of these languages, so German and French, is with the combination of the Dutch language. So Dutch started becoming more and more popular on the market as well. And again, tying back to what I mentioned previously, that youngsters maybe lose their job or have a struggle finding a job, and companies not being able to provide long-term opportunities at the moment, temporary recruitment started becoming quite popular. So hiring for shorter-term projects or hiring people on a temporary contract through either an agency or just offering short-term employment contracts. So what can we do about the current situation and how can we approach the current market? So first and foremost, I would like to talk about job adverts. I think it's very important because this is the first tool to attract candidates. And I think sometimes we don't necessarily realize what we put out there in our job description. So one thing that could be really, really important, if your company is doing good on the market and you weren't impacted by COVID-19, that's definitely something to mention in the job description. So make it more attractive to candidates. If you plan a future, if you have some certainty for the future, you're planning to grow, you're doing well, definitely mention that in your job description. So the company status on the current market should definitely be there. But again, one thing we probably not haven't realized that at the moment, ping pong, beer, after work borrows, and a good atmosphere in the office is not really a selling point, as opposed to having other form of support. So for instance, working from home equipment, providing a screen, or some financial support to buy working from home equipment, anything like that that could make it more attractive. Because yeah, at the moment, most of us are working from home, and for the foreseeable future, that's not going to change. So it's extremely important that yeah, these secondary benefits also get adjusted to the current situation. Not to mention that ensuring candidates' health and safety is there in the job description as well. So tying to the interview process, that you do video interviews at the moment and you're not meeting people face to face, what the expectations could be for the future. Are you planning to return to the offices? Anything that could be relevant for the future hire should be mentioned there. But having said that, transparency and honesty is very, very important too. Already from not just from a hiring perspective, but for a future career perspective as well. So as I mentioned, if you're doing well, emphasize that. If you're not doing well, I'm not saying that's something that should be in the job description. However, if you can only offer a temporary contract at the moment, or you cannot guarantee a future in the company, mention that this position will be open for now, let's say for the foreseeable future, for 7 months, let's say, and with the possibility of getting renewed, or with no possibility of getting renewed, or yeah, to have a further discussion about that later on. But I think setting the right expectations currently is extremely important, especially if you are trying to headhunt people who are having jobs right now, or who have some job certainty. It really needs, it's really important for them to change for a job that's having a future for their perspective. The hiring process. So our experience is that there are two types of situations. On the one hand, we realized that some clients, they put a hiring freeze on their recruitment processes. So they weren't able to hire people for a couple of months' time, but these hiring freezes all of a sudden started being lifted. So everyone could start hiring, and all of a sudden you needed employees by yesterday. I think we are all familiar with this situation, which is fine. And of course, you can hire people fast. However, if you think that this person could be potentially part of your team in the long run, I would still suggest to take the time to hire the right candidate, because the last thing you want is to just hire someone fast, not making sure that you hire the right person. And in the end, if the position is available in the long run, then you are stuck with someone who doesn't really perform the way you expected it. And then you just have to start the process all over again. And on the other hand, the other trend that we noticed was that you had an opening, but again, due to uncertainty, you weren't sure when the position would start, or when you need someone, or how this person could fit in the current team structure, or how things will be changing. And then you started the recruitment process, you started talking to candidates, and then things were just not moving eventually. And of course, candidates then tend to get impatient, and they don't know what's going on, and they've had several interviews already, but nothing came out of it. Of course, yeah, that's not really the best case scenario for them. So if you don't have the certainty, or you cannot really give a concrete answer on when this person should be starting in the job, then I would definitely mention that during the process as well, that maybe this is just an open conversation. You need to define the processes at the moment, but at least they are aware of what's going on within your company. Another trend that we realized, and this figure is actually coming from LinkedIn Insights as well, internal mobility increased by 20%. So not only did companies start shifting their employees within the organization, within a country, but also maybe cross-border. So relocating people started becoming a trend as well, or maybe not even necessarily relocating, considering that most of the people are working remotely at the moment, but to fill in for other functions from different countries. And also a referral system started becoming quite popular, and going back to my the popular comp and ben related positions. So companies started coming up with referral programs and different compensation if their employees can refer other employees for other future hires within the organization. And another thing that we started noticing is that companies come back to us mentioning that they don't need the services of recruitment agencies right now because they have huge responses to their advertisements and they have plenty of candidates to select from. However, one thing I would like to mention here is engaging candidates in this uncertain situation is very, very important. And we also know that internal recruiters can be extremely busy working on several positions at the same time. So you need to make sure that your processes are defined and you can handle these huge responses. So you have the capacity to reject candidates, to interview candidates, to invite them for first rounds of interviews. And having said that, we recently actually started offering a service as well, where you give us access to an internal database, and we can help you shortlist candidates, and we can help you define the processes, and then help with the rejections or help with the huge amount of responses. So yeah, in case you need any kind of service like that, feel free to contact us, and we can always get into a further discussion about it. So what happens if, despite all the huge responses, you're still struggling to find talent? So it can happen that, for example, you are expanding, you are in a need of a volume number of people. Our suggestion is to give space to fresh graduates. They might actually surprise you. Fresh graduates are part of the Gen Z generation, so they are extremely tech savvy. They know what they're talking about when it comes to technology. So, and what more can you want from especially nowadays when we talk about a digital world? They tend to pick up on a new task quite fast. They are perfectly capable of multitasking as well, and they tend to be quite independent. So I think working from home should not be an issue for them either. However, when it comes to sourcing for these fresh graduates, you might need to venture out to different platforms. So of course, LinkedIn is there, and I think universities tend to encourage students to be on LinkedIn. However, other platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, well, I'm not mentioning Facebook because I think that's more for the millennial generation, but yeah, the Snapchat, all these kinds of platforms could be a very interesting source for younger candidates. And not to mention that because they are also doing their studies remotely at the moment, this could be a potential possibility for them to join in an internship or to do a part-time job. Recently, we had a big e-commerce client of ours that was expanding to another market, and we did receive a volume project from them where the salaries were not necessarily market conform, so it was a bit lower paid, but at the same time they gave a lot of flexibility on working hours and part-time jobs. So our primary source of candidates were actually fresh graduates or students that could do a part-time job while studying as well. And since everything was going remotely, there was no better way to do this. And when it comes to more experienced candidates, what I could recommend is to have some flexibility for candidates coming from different sectors. So if we are sticking to, let's say, the customer service example, you might be a company that requires business to business or that is hiring for a business to business order management position, customer service experience is required. But with the hospitality and tourism sector struggling, you might actually find really talented people with good language skills. Maybe they have B2C customer service experience. However, they definitely have the service mindset and the language skills that you could be requiring for your job. And the hard skills can always be picked up on. So I would definitely recommend maybe considering different sectors for more senior candidates as well. Then when it comes to the interview process, phone interviews simply won't do. And I think this, again, is not coming as a massive shock. When it comes to doing interviews right now, I think doing video interviews is already quite challenging. It's definitely not the same as doing a face-to-face interview. However, if you want to gauge the personality of the candidate and how they are presenting themselves on a job interview, how they talk, their body language, all those kinds of things, it's definitely better to do a video interview. And our experience is also that personality tests started becoming a more important role, or it started becoming an essential part of the recruitment process. Recently, we work with a client, or actually currently I'm working with one of our clients that starts the whole process with the personality and the cognitive test, and only afterwards they engage in a video interview. And I think that's a brilliant idea, because already if there are some points, some concerns that can be addressed during those interviews, that's a good way to do it already. And of course, transferable and soft skills start becoming more important throughout the interview. So as opposed to looking for the perfect background, I think looking for those transferable and soft skills that could be important in the job is definitely more relevant at the moment. So soft skills like communication, people skills, adaptability, flexibility, agility, honesty, positivity. Of course, all these are extremely important, considering that we are all working from home, we are lonely in our jobs. Of course, we are trying to engage with our companies and with our teams, but at the same time, having that kind of attitude and having those kinds of personality traits can be very important in the job. And when it comes to more senior, so executive type of candidates or managerial candidates, one important skill is having that kind of rolling up the sleeves and getting our hands dirty mentality, because the last thing you want is a manager who is just sitting at home and delegating all the tasks. So it started becoming more important to have this kind of operational approach. However, when it comes to doing video interviews, one recommendation I can also give is to train your hiring managers to do video interviews. So if you're a recruiter, if you're an HR professional, you might be used to doing video interviews with candidates, but your hiring managers might not. And it's not just about knowing the technology and knowing the tool that you're using for video interviews, but also some other kind of important aspects on how to conduct a video interview. During the interview, it's also really important to bring your company culture across. So you have to put that extra effort in to describe what it would mean to work for your company. So how is the team? Do you do any kind of activities at the moment? Did you do in the past? So of course you can refer to the situation when everything was normal, but how did you approach the pandemic? What did you do to make sure that your employees are safe, that they are supported? Do you do any kind of activities at the moment with them? So at Adams, for instance, we do monthly social activities, whether it's a pub quiz or some story time or any kind of team building activity, but it's very, very important that you remain connected with your team. And it's important that you emphasize that during the interview as well. Employer branding, diversity, and inclusions are also hot topics at the moment. So of course, companies that are open and inclusive, they tend to be at cultures where employees appreciate working in and where people are proud to be working. And to mention that and to take this into account when you are interviewing and when you're hiring someone could be very, very, useful information for the candidates as well, but it's also just building your employer branding. And I would like to give a shout out to Julia Brouwers. She is actually a very good ambassador of the diversity and inclusion topic. Recently, we did an interview with her, so you can find it on our blog as well. And being disabled herself, of course, she has firsthand experience in the diversity and inclusion topic. So I would definitely recommend checking her out and reading more about her story. And of course, the virtual onboarding experience. So once you have your hire, make sure that this person can become part of your organization as soon as possible. And the only way to do that now is to provide an excellent virtual onboarding experience. I'm actually not going to go too much in details about this because we did a previous webinar on this. So if you're interested in knowing more about this topic, I would recommend for you to check out our YouTube channel. Our previous webinar is uploaded there. And of course, if you have any further questions on the topic, you can always ask it now, or you can always contact me later on as well. To conduct the perfect interview and to make sure that you can hire the right people, of course, we have to talk about recruiter skills as well. And in 2020, the most important recruiter skill will be adaptability. So I think us recruiters like to think that we are chameleons anyways. So not just under the current situation, but when it comes to just a regular situation as well. I mean, we need to adjust our interview styles when we talk to an introvert candidate or to an extrovert candidate, whether we talk to hiring managers or our clients. We need to adapt ourselves and our styles to all these kinds of situations. But right now, with the market changing and with the whole pandemic influencing everything, we need to adapt ourselves even further. And actually, again, from a LinkedIn Insights, the fastest growing skills for recruiters in 2020 were personal development. So of course, that comes hand in hand with the adaptability as well, and to improve the skills that you could be benefiting from under current circumstances. Diversity and inclusion, surprisingly, not really. This is what I mentioned previously as well. So this is a very, very hot topic right now, and recruiters put a lot of emphasis on diversity and inclusion at the moment. Talent pipelining, going back to what I mentioned previously about engaging talent. So this goes hand in hand with the talent pipelining. The decision making and HR strategy, of course, because your organization might be changing. Everything is changing at the moment, and we just need to remain agile, and we need to make those efficient decisions and come up with a strategy that suits your organization as well. Remote working. So yeah, of course, as I mentioned previously a couple of times already, and I think this is something that we constantly hear about. At the moment, we are all working remotely. However, if output and productivity hasn't been negatively impacted by this remote working situation, can you imagine your organization staying working remotely, or do you expect employees to go back to the office from day one once it's safe to go back? So again, this is something to think about for the future. Because if you remain working remotely, then this could actually open up a broader candidate scope. It could open up to a cross-border and location-less recruitment. For instance, at the moment, we worked, or recently we worked on positions that were based in Germany, but we got the assignment from the Netherlands, or the other way around, we got some assignments from Germany to recruit in the Netherlands. So it's all, a whole different type of recruitment as well. And what I mentioned earlier also about internal movement, employee movement. So it all comes hand in hand with the whole, borderless recruitment. And the L&D part also comes here, where I mentioned that the L&D type of positions started becoming more and more popular as well, because of course the internal movement of the candidates. So it's not only the hiring or the recruitment, the hiring managers or the managers of the organization realizing that they need employees from for a temporary project, that the learning and development professionals can help recruit or internally mobilize, but also later on, if we talk about borderless recruitment, this could be getting a bigger emphasis as well. And if you plan to work from home for the future, or if you know already what your situation is, again, emphasize that during the job ads or during the interviews or in the job ads, because maybe at the moment everything is remote. Maybe once it's safe to go back, you're going back. But then once you go back, what will be the expectations? Do you expect all your employees to be in the office all the time, or what will happen later on? It's good to set the expectations already. And one recommendation I can do here, and again, a shout out to our managing and executive directors, Florian and Laura. They recently conducted a survey within our company, and just to see what our expectations as employees will be, and whether we do want to go back to the office once it's safe to go back to the office. And actually we came up with a totally different structure or construction than we had in the past. And I must say it was very welcome. It's engaging the current employees, and of course it's really reassuring that they take our perspective into consideration as well. It's not just an executive decision made that everyone is following. So it's also a good idea to engage your current employees and ask them what they are expecting when it comes to the future. And also, what do candidates want? So it's not just your employees, but what do candidates want? Ask them. I definitely suggest to engage them in a conversation during the interview, what their expectations are from a workplace. We collected a couple of ideas here. So of course, when it comes to the recruitment process, their expectations are to have clearly defined, fast and efficient recruitment processes, like all of us, and to have compassionate and empathetic employers. So everyone is expecting some form of empathy, some form of flexibility, trust at the moment, in order to make sure that we can survive this situation together. And of course, when they are hired, they expect safety and security. And surprisingly, money at the moment didn't become the most important factor in a job. Candidates want a meaningful and impactful job. And of course, flexibility, flexibility, and flexibility. So the key takeaways, transparency and honesty throughout the process is really key to set the right expectations for candidates and for employees. Attract the candidates with your job ads, so really put an emphasis on constructing a good job advertisement that's emphasizing your company perks, how you're doing on the market, what you're expecting from a candidate. So not just emphasizing or try not to sell the job with the responsibilities, but more with the company culture and what you can offer as an organization. Be open-minded towards junior candidates as well and different industry experiences, because they can surprise you and they can have a lot of transferable skills that could be interesting for your hire. Try to have an efficient hiring process and provide flexibility throughout the interview process and throughout the employment as well. So now I'm, of course, happy to take your questions. So I see there are already questions coming in. So you were all on mute. I'm sorry, I did not see this question coming in. You were all on mute. This is not an open discussion, actually, or this wasn't an open discussion. Probably you realized that later on. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear from the very beginning. What methods would you recommend to get hiring managers to buy into hiring and training a graduate rather than hiring someone that has some more relevant experience? That's a very good question. Methods for hiring managers to buy into hiring and training a graduate. So Bradley, that's a very good question. So honestly, I think it's just reasoning and it's keeping an open mind. As I said, fresh graduates might surprise you by their motivation, by their eagerness, by bringing some fresh ideas into the job as well. So it's really just having an open conversation with the hiring manager. If they really insist on certain hard skills or they feel that certain hard skills are necessary for a job, then of course it's going to be very difficult to reason with them and to promote a fresh graduate for that job. However, if soft skills are more important, then maybe that could be a solution, especially if you have the capacity to invest a bit more time in a fresh graduate, establish some buddy programs. So if I think you tell the hiring manager that the workload of training a new person might not be only their responsibility, but involving other team members, establishing a buddy program. So if I think for the hiring managers, this is not going to cause an extra workload, that could be a good way to convince them to consider fresh graduates. Are there any personality tests that you would recommend? To be honest with you, no. I know puppy tests are very popular. I know some companies use the color test. So there are so many different personality tests. I think it's also depending on what your organization's needs are or what you put your emphasis on, which industry you're coming from. So honestly, there are a couple. I'm happy to suggest a couple of ones. I will probably need to do my research as well. So Bradley, if you would like to have a further chat about this, connect to me and we can maybe do some recommendations, or I can give you some recommendations later on based on your needs as well. What are your recommendations for places to advertise jobs to increase diversity? So of course, the standard job platforms, LinkedIn, I think from what I understood from candidates that I recently asked, most of them search for jobs on LinkedIn and Indeed. But I would also recommend maybe just networking. So even if you just post a job on your platform or on your personal LinkedIn profile, that could also trigger some applicants that you would otherwise not get through your network maybe. And maybe also you can emphasize in the job ad itself that you are an open work environment that's promoting diversity. Very informative presentation, Edina. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad you thought so. How can an agency promote our company culture without naming us in the job advert? So, of course, if you have a trusted recruitment partner, we like to think that we are a brand ambassador to our clients, actually. So, once we qualify the job with you, once we talk about your organization, we get to know you, then we can be your brand ambassador. So when it comes to a legal part, of course, GDPR, we don't promote your company in our job advertisements. However, once we engage in a conversation with a candidate, then of course we tell them which company we are talking about. So then we can do the employer branding for you. And yeah, the more information you share with us about your company culture, the more we can transfer through the candidates as well. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. All right, some more questions maybe. Oh yeah, Bradley also shared some job boards. That's very handy. Thank you very much. Maybe some further questions. In the meantime, I will also put my contact information here. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, send me an email, WhatsApp, phone. I'm available on all kinds of platforms, so feel free to reach out. How much feedback do candidates expect if they are unsuccessful? This gets particularly difficult with large numbers. Yes, and it's, yeah, thank you for the question, Tim. It goes back to what I mentioned about engagement with candidates. So actually just recently I saw someone posted on LinkedIn that when you are bidding for a house, when you want to buy a house and you're bidding for a house and you don't get it, but they just tell you, you don't get it. You expect to know why, like you didn't have enough funds or the price went up or anything more specific. So of course, candidates expect some feedback as well on why they were not successful. So sending out a general rejection email that you didn't qualify, at least tell that you didn't qualify because you don't speak the languages or because you don't have the software knowledge that you require, any kind of information that could be possible. This is of course just coming to candidates that you didn't interview. Once you interview them, then they expect even more feedback, of course. So of course, the more they know, the more feedback you can provide to them, the more successful they can be in future recruitment processes. So again, keep it professional, but keep it also very transparent because candidates can learn a lot from this. If the role is confidential, what is the best way to promote it? Did you have such project experience? Yes, we do sometimes. So we do receive confidential requests from our clients sometimes that, of course, we cannot advertise them. In that case, we just source for the position. So we do go into our headhunting mode and we really try to approach candidates. In that case, of course, sometimes they need to sign a confidentiality agreement. So once they know about the company, that they won't share any further information with the outside world, especially if it's a confidential project. What I mentioned earlier, that we received this project that our client was expanding to a market, to another market. For the longest time, that project was actually very, very confidential. So we could advertise the roles, but we could not tell why they are actually hiring for the positions. And then later on, our client explained that to the candidates. And of course, I think at that point, they also signed a confidentiality agreement. So there are different ways to approach this, depending, of course, on the nature, why it's confidential and how you would like to also approach it. For promotion, it's a bit difficult. Of course, you can advertise jobs without name, especially if you go through an agency. You can advertise a job without mentioning anything specific, or to put out a fairly vague job ad. But my experience is that approaching it more from a headhunting perspective, that's more successful. I see in the meantime that the chat window is also flashing. So let me see. Yes, all right. So I see some questions came in here as well. How is the construction sector doing in the Netherlands? I would say really well. From what I've seen, there are a lot of construction projects. Well, I'm not sure which type of construction we are talking about. The housing sector is definitely doing well, and I've seen a lot of housing projects. So I would say it's doing really good. How much feedback do candidates expect? That I've seen already, or that I answered, I hope. Will you also send a copy of the slide deck to participants? We can look into it. You will definitely receive the recording. I'm not sure about the slides, but if you would like to receive it, reach out to me, and I'm happy to share it with you. Oh, I see that my colleague in the meantime answered that. All right. What are the more problematic roles to hire, and has there been a change? I would say there has been a change, but it goes back to having a certain kind of experience that companies expect. So sometimes we receive requests where companies are really looking for a candidate that's 150% match to what they expect. And sometimes they cannot even identify what exactly that means. So that's also, of course, more problematic to hire for. In terms of industries or languages, I didn't notice so much of a change, if I'm completely honest with you. So as long as you can clearly define what you're looking for, what your organization needs, I don't find that more challenging. Rita asked another question. Have employers' expectations changed? Are they more demanding? Rita, feel free to ask all the questions. Of course, that's why we are here, and that's why we are having a Q&A session. So all your questions are more than welcome. Employers' expectations have changed a bit, in a sense that, yeah, what I mentioned earlier, they expect a lot of flexibility and transparency in the process. Maybe it wasn't even so much of a change as it got emphasized more. So I would say the demands are more in terms of secondary benefits. So working from home, flexibility, transparency, support from the organizations. That, of course, changed with the market. In terms of salary and more those kinds of expectations, I don't notice so much of a change. I think a couple more questions came in the Q&A bit. David asked, do you share the slides? Yes, we do share the slides, apparently. My colleague from marketing replied to that already. What is the impact of COVID on you guys? Have you kept busy? So yes and no. In my opinion, agency recruitment is always a roller coaster. So there are always certain periods that are busier than others. We do realize seasonalities. Our last quarter used to be always very busy. We will see how it's going to be now. Of course, in the beginning of the pandemic and during the lockdown, our workload also went down with companies not really hiring. This has also changed a bit over the summer. So we do experience a higher number of vacancies coming in. So yes, we did experience the pandemic. Luckily, it didn't impact us that much. We have a lot of good clients that are still hiring, and yeah, luckily we are still here. Are you planning more webinars similar to this one? How can we stay informed? Definitely. So subscribe to our newsletters. We are always sending out information about our upcoming webinars, and you can also like us on LinkedIn or follow us on LinkedIn so that you can stay up to date on the upcoming webinars as well. So if there are no further questions, then I would like to close this webinar. Thank you very much for your active participation and for all your questions. I really appreciated it. I hope I could give you some very useful information, and yeah, let's stay connected for the future. And I hope to see you soon again. Have a nice day. Bye.